Hello and welcome back. My name is Torviz, and today we will be doing another compilation video, where me and my pal Yoshy will be reading short stories from the likes of No Sleep, Letsnotmeet, and a few other stories. Number 1. Today I went to the movies to see Deadpool. Alongside me was my stepmother, who has recently been training to be a cop. In the beginning, everything was going normally and everything was good. I loved the movie and I had seen it once before this. Towards the end of the movie, though, I noticed an older man who had walked to the top of the theater where me and my stepmother were sitting, and he sat there. He didn't watch the movie, didn't sit down, didn't do anything except stare at the people. I blew it off thinking he was looking for someone and couldn't find them. He then went down toward the entrance of the room and did the same thing, looked up at everyone and stared for another 7 to 10 minutes before leaving. I thought it was odd, but continued watching the movie. About 2 minutes later, I see the same old man walk in, only this time he walked very slowly across the theater. Not facing the screen or anything, but once again looking at all of the people. My stepmother looked at me and whispered, "Grab your things and head to the lobby." I began to get a little freaked out and did what she said. I went to the bathroom to pee, and when I came out, there was 4 workers standing outside the theater, and she was explaining how his behavior was like that of someone about to shoot up a room. He was scanning the room and everyone in it. After a while, the workers took control of the situation and watched the man for a bit, just to make sure everything was well. 2 workers went in, and after about 5 minutes, they came out saying, "Yeah, dude, he's still standing there and staring at everyone." Soon after, we left the theater, just to be safe. Once getting home, she had called one of her friends that works at the police station and talked to them about it. They said he was a middle-aged man and he had a loaded weapon on him the whole time he was in there, and never once sat down nor stopped looking at everybody.
Number 2. This happened maybe 10 years ago when I was in my early 30s. I was standing in line at a local pharmacy to get my prescriptions. This is a small town and I'm a regular there, so they might know me on sight. I was behind a couple of other people in line, and there were a couple of people behind me. I kept feeling a tickle in my hair in the back of my head, but every time I looked behind me, the guy there was a few steps back looking at the floor. This happened several times by the time I was at the front of the line. The pharmacist told me she wanted to talk about my medication in the consultation room that they had at the time, since converted to a bathroom. I thought this was weird because we both knew I had been on this medication for years and would be for life. Nothing new. I get back to the room and close the door, and she comes into the door at the other side that leads from the pharmacy. She told me that the man behind me had kept stepping forward, sticking his nose in my hair, smelling before stepping back and looking at the floor. This shook me pretty badly, as this was such weird behavior, especially in my little town. The pharmacy staff insisted on having me wait there until the guy was distracted by another pharmacy employee, and they had a security guard walk me to my car and watch me drive off to make sure I was gone before Hair Sniffer came out and saw that I was driving and what direction I was going. I still use this pharmacy, and some of the people still work there. I'd always been grateful that they took the initiative to make sure I was safe that day.
Number 3. I had a pretty crappy day today. 2 women, who were quite rude, stayed past closing where I work, so I missed the bus that would take me to the bus station. My home is a few miles walk from the place, which I can normally do pretty easily, but not when it's 90 degrees out. So I tried to walk to the bus station and ended up getting there just as my bus home was leaving. I ran after it only to fall on the pavement. I managed to skin both of my knees and scrape up my arm during the fall. It hurt. The next bus wouldn't come for another half hour, and I was upset and tired. I know it's childish, but I cried. I called a friend who lives nearby and has a car, but she didn't answer, and I did not want to make that walk while bleeding and sobbing, so I sat on one of the benches and cried. People ignored me, which I expected, except for one man sitting a bit away. He was maybe mid-50s and was staring at me with this huge grin. I tried to ignore him since I've had my fair share of creeps at bus stations. There was a period where there were no buses in the station, meaning no one was at the station. It was just him and I was still crying at that point. He decided to take out his phone, without hiding it, started taking photos of me sobbing with my knees both bloody messes. I'm horrible with scary situations, so I froze up and tried to act like he didn't exist. A bus came a few minutes later and he put his phone away, winked at me, and got on the bus. I feel gross and freaked out. Creepy old guy. let's not meet.
Number 4. I'm a smoker, and at my in-laws, they are non-smokers. So I go out to the screened-in porch and indulge. I don't empty that ashtray every time because I'm afraid I'll start a fire. So I emptied around 4 or 5 a.m. before my mother-in-law and father-in-law wake up because respect, okay? So I wake up to take a pee and go to empty the ashtray out from the porch. I open the unlocked screen door and, holding my dollar store plastic bag, and notice a large, hulking shape dressed in all black. Black jeans, black hoodie pulled over his face, black gloves, black work boots at 4:30 a.m., about 45 feet away, just standing there, like a statue. There's no way he could be out jogging. Furthermore, who begins work at 4:30 in the morning? Okay, I didn't mention that the screen door that lets you into the patio from the outside has no lock. I turned my body to dump. I said dump. The ashes and cigs into the bag as I turned back. Not 6 seconds later, the hulking dude is right at the screen door with his hand on the handle. How did he get there so fast? How did I not hear it? So a voice is screaming, "Don't scream. Don't take your eyes off of him. Just back in the kitchen and lock the slider door." I did. Never tried the screen door. But my in-laws are gun dealers, so all I can think of is, bitch, you picked the wrong house. I ran to my husband's room, left the door open, so if I did hear a noise, then I'd scream. I was so scared because I did not know how he descended on me so silently. Have no clue what he wanted, but it couldn't have been good. Fart narco who snuck up on me, go fuck yourself. Oh, come on, you crazy lunatic. I have a set 50 just for you.
Number 5. Life's tough when your best friend is a serial killer. Tom and I started hanging out when we were in kindergarten. By all rights, we should have become friends. He came from a rough family with an alcoholic mother and an absent father. I came from a strict, but loving, and overprotective family. Still, once we started playing together, we just couldn't stop. Nobody cared much at first, not even my own family, but as we got older and hit upper elementary, we became inseparable. That's when my parents began to worry. I don't think they worried about Tom so much. Despite the faults of his upbringing, he was always a good kid, very nice to me, and we played well together. They did, however, worry about his parents. To that end, we only ever hung out at school. Eventually, we made it to high school, and by that time, everyone had accepted that we were best friends for life. My parents struggled with that, but eventually they relaxed. Sometimes they'd even let Tom and me hang out around town, although they kept a close eye on us. What do I like about Tom? Everything. I like the way he twitches his nose before he sneezes, and the way he bounces on the balls of his feet when he's excited to tell me something. I like his brown curly hair and the freckles dusting his cheeks. I like that he's the first person I see at school every day, and the last person I say goodbye to each night. Those feelings didn't change when the murders started happening. David was the first person to die. He was a grade older than Tom and me, and he bullied Tom mercilessly. Tom was an easy target. He didn't have a lot of money, he was awkward, and I was really his only friend. He attracted bullies like flies to honey. One day after school, David cornered Tom in the parking lot and punched him in the face. No warning, no reason, just punched him as hard as he could. He probably would have kept going, but I caught him in the act and raised hell about it, shouting for help and screaming at him. David took off and I dragged Tom to the nurse's office just as his eyes started to swell. He was extremely calm while the nurse treated him, but his silence was telling. He didn't stick around to hang out with me afterwards. He went straight home without saying a word. The next day, David was found dead at the local park. It wasn't a clean job by any means. He'd been stabbed multiple times in the stomach and had eventually bled to death. Everyone was in shock. Our town isn't exactly huge, and murders aren't commonplace. School was canceled, and the cops began an investigation. Unfortunately for David and his family, they had no idea what they were doing. You'd like to think that all cops are trained to handle a crime scene properly, but cops in a small town never really expect to have to do something like that. They barely gathered any evidence, and what they did manage to gather, they contaminated. There were rumors. Everyone at school knew that David had attacked Tom after school the day before. For a few days, people looked at Tom funny in the hallways, but David was a well-known bully, and Tom was far from the only kid that he harassed. It could have been anyone at school. Hell, it could have been anyone in town. David's bullshit wasn't confined to our school alone. As for Tom and me, well, we never talked about what happened to David. We just kept living our lives as normal. Both of us silently glad that fucker was dead. The case dragged on, but it became clear that the cops were never going to find out who did it. Eventually, people got tired of talking about it and we all moved on. The next murder occurred several months later. This time it was a girl from our school named Stephanie. She was strange. She was pretty and smart and sort of popular, but that was never enough for her. She always wanted more. If you ask me, I think she's really insecure, and she hated me. She had hated me ever since we were in 7th grade and I got the part in the school play that she'd wanted. She was really the only person who tried bullying me in school. For the most part, I didn't let it bother me. I ignored her petty crap and went on with my life. Tom never understood that. "Why don't you stand up to her?" he asked me once. "What's the point?" I shrugged. "She doesn't bother me that much anyway. Besides, ignoring her makes her even more angry." Stephanie was found in a dumpster behind one of the town bars. She too had been stabbed, but the wounds were more precise this time. She'd taken a knife to the jugular and had bled out in minutes. Once again, the police investigated. Once again, they came up with nothing. Once again, people started looking at Tom funny. It was common knowledge that Stephanie was obsessed with me, that she'd been bothering me all these years, and a few months after Tom's bully ended up dead, she met the same fate? Theories started forming. People thought of Tom as my knight in shining, blood-soaked armor. Just like before, Tom and I didn't talk about Stephanie's murder. I think Tom wanted to, a few times over lunch. He glanced up at me, opened his mouth, and then averted his eyes and changed the subject. As though he couldn't quite bring himself to say it. I didn't mind. As far as I was concerned, there was nothing to be said. We both understood each other without words, anyway. No matter what happened, nothing would change between us. The third and most recent murder happened only a month after Stephanie's. This time, it was a person with no obvious connection to Tom or to me. The town drunk Lester was found dead, stabbed to death. He was a nuisance to everybody, especially the girls in town, who he liked to catcall and occasionally stalk, and the town is better for his absence. Even though Tom never had any dealings with Lester, he was called in and questioned by the police. Fortunately, I was able to provide him with a bulletproof alibi. Tom and I, you see, had gone to see a movie the night before in the town over. I even showed the cops our ticket stubs. Never mind that Tom and I have never been to a movie together per my parents' paranoia. Never mind that the ticket stubs were actually for my younger sister and me. The cops didn't have to know that. They accepted my word without question. After all, I was a good, trustworthy kid, and agreed that they would keep my involvement a secret. I told them I was afraid of repercussions from the other students. In reality, I couldn't let my parents know what I'd done. They know I had lied immediately. Tom was released and the cops assured everyone of his innocence. Still, the kids at school wouldn't look at him. Nobody wanted to talk to him, and I don't think that bothered him much. After all, nobody had really talked to him before, except me. This time around, Tom was bursting to talk to me about it. All of it. I wasn't quite sure why. Like I said, words were often unnecessary between us. Both of us knew where we stood, knew what was happening and why. But I care about Tom, and hell, if he really wanted to do this, we'd do it. A few nights after Lester's murder, I snuck out of the house. I made my way across town, not stopping until I was outside Tom's bedroom window. I knocked quietly, and he appeared almost instantly, as though he'd been expecting me. A few moments later, we were sitting in his backyard, talking in low voices. "This doesn't change anything between us," I said. He shifted nervously beside me, and I tried to sound as sincere as I felt. "You're still my best friend. Everything is just like it was." I could sense him shake his head. "You know that's not true. Things can't go on like this for much longer." I bristled. "Why not? The cops here have no idea what they're doing. They'll never figure it out. People can talk all they want. Without evidence, they can't do shit." He sighed. "People will figure it out. Eventually, something will slip through the cracks, and it'll all be over." We sat in silence for a few moments. I hated it, but he was right. Finally, I answered him. Fine, you made your point. I'll be more careful next time. Next time? He said, disapproval clear in his voice. I mean, if there's a next time, I amended. If people leave us alone, there will be no need for it. You don't have to protect me, he said. I know, but I'm going to anyway. At that, I stood up. I better get home before my parents figure out I'm gone. See you at school tomorrow? Sounds good. Tom climbed back up his bedroom window, then turned back to me and whispered, Don't forget what you said. I rolled my eyes. I won't, I promise. You worry too much. He closed his window and I started my long walk back home, my right hand in my pocket, tracing the sharp edge of my favorite knife. Life's tough when your best friend's a serial killer. I don't know how Tom does it.